things like landmarks, goalposts, whatever you want to call it, of like, I'm on the right track. If you're not hitting those landmarks, goalposts, maybe you have to decide on, is this the right way to go? Is this the wrong way to go?
The 7 habits of highly effective people. In general, it's meant to be like a mindset, how you approach any sort of goal or endeavor in your life.
And instead of being like, well, maybe Christian Dog isn't the best singer.
I don't know, let's see.
Yeah. You can stream my music
Quick plug.
on Spotify. I have music. Don't judge it. All right. We're just going to jump right into this. Welcome back to another episode, everybody. We still do not have a name for
Audio
this.
clipping?
Audio. Yeah, probably. We still do not have a name for this. I think we have come to a conclusion. But by next episode, you will know the name we have chosen for this.
Which is also what we said last episode.
We're just going to keep pushing this goalpost back, which we're going to...
Yeah, that's right. We
right,
have a goal, though.
We have a goal.
Just got a 5-year family.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about goalposts, setting good goalposts in your life. And by goalposts, I mean things like landmarks, goalposts, whatever you want to call it, of like, I'm on the right track. If you're not hitting those landmarks, goalposts, maybe you have to decide on, is this the right way to go? Is this the wrong way to go? We'll be focusing more on business and in that kind of spect, but it's also a personal thing too. I feel like that these are good checks to make sure you don't wind up in your 70s and be like, I don't think I ever accomplished anything, or I chose all the wrong things. And I have a specific conversation I had with one of my professors at school that really changed my life on how I tackled
that's cool.
goals and where I was going to go, and really changed my trajectory in my life.
Wow.
So we'll get into that in a minute. But first, I wanted to we're going to do a book series. Stephen, intro the book before we get to the topic.
So the book is called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. This particular version has a foreword by Jim Collins, who we're familiar with. This group. Good to Great, Built to Last, and all the other ones right here.
All the ones behind you.
And then it's got some fresh insights, this version, from his son, which is kind of cool, Sean Covey. So that's kind of cool. And he talks a little bit about what his dad taught him, Stephen Covey. This is kind of a cool.
That's a cool book.
Cool take on the learnings. In general, it's meant to be a bit of like a mindset, how you approach any sort of goal or endeavor in your life. And then I'm trying to get to the table of contents. They have like he splits it up into 4 different sections. One is more like the principles, why this is an important concept to start thinking about, and how it starts internal and then slowly grows into something external when you're thinking about being effective as a person in any sort of endeavor that you might have. But he talks about the private, the public, and then the renewal. And it's funny, I think there's also some biblical undertones to this. So I think as the 3 of us read this, I think it'd be cool to think about what Christ has to say about being effective, because that's ultimately what we care about. But this would be a good tactical way of thinking about that, and maybe provide some application and color. So I don't know where Stephen Covey's faith was, but I do know where you guys are at, so that'd be cool to.
That'd be cool.
That'd be cool to insert as we digest what it means to be effective. So
now we got to make sure we read it.
Yeah, I know, right?
Or listen to it.
Yeah,
Audible is always a nice.
Yes,
I'll be doing Audible. It'll get done.
All right, so I want to talk about.
Give us some
goalposts. Get more landmarks, flags, whatever you want to call it.
Are you talking like when you say goalposts? You're talking about like I want to achieve X by Y date type
goal setting.
Is that what you mean?
I'm actually gonna. So I think I might be using goalposts wrong. Let's call it landmarks.
Okay.
So.
Or milestones, maybe.
Milestones, maybe. Yeah. It could be all those. So I'm gonna. So it goes. Goals. It comes into. So the reason why I want to talk about it is like a lot of times like, as entrepreneurs, whatever it is, you gotta like. A lot of times you can like pursue something for a while and just keep pursuing it and keep pursuing it, and then like you don't take the time to be like, well, is this the best? Is this working? Is this not working?
Right.
I'll share the story of kind of how I got to this point. But I went to school for music. I went to Nashville for a little while, and someone there that I respected. We got talking about like, so we watched this movie about musicians who kind of just keep pursuing the craft, even if it's not working. They kind of just like they don't like provide for the family well. They don't do the right things that they're supposed to do. But they're kind of like, I just need to do it. I'm just gonna, at all expense, I'm just gonna do it. And it really kind of woke me up to be like, shoot, like I don't want to live, like it's not bad to pursue. And my thing is not bad to pursue creative things. It's not bad, like passions, dreams, whatever it is. But the moral of the story that I got and the conversation I had is like you have to have landmarks, flags, whatever it is. Like if I don't hit this at this time, I need to readjust or I need to rethink instead of just being like blindly going for something.
I see.
So that's kind of where I was going with it.
Yeah.
Because like we watched a movie of like these like old rockers, and they just like it was like a documentary, but like they put out like their 11th album. They weren't making any success, and he was just working like a really really crappy job.
Yeah.
And he was like, but I need to do this.
Right.
And he kept doing it. And he like his friends and families were like encouraging him to keep doing it, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about like how important it is to like have those kind of markers as you pursue stuff, to be like, oh, this is working or this isn't working, and to be like have the ability to be like, all right, I need to readjust. So that's kind of where I was going with it. Because when I was in Nashville, I was debating if I was like, oh, am I gonna move down to Nashville and like pursue this? But I was like, that's like a lot of risk in it. So it was like, and he was like, well, and that kind of really changed my trajectory of like, when I'm not going to go down to Nashville, I'm going to stay in PA. I'm going to do the thing and like start working. And like, I feel like the Lord has blessed that. But like, I think it's really important because I feel like a lot of people can kind of like get in the mindset of like, just head down, keep going. And they either neglect their, like as a man, you neglect what your responsibility is to provide for family, whatever it is, because you're pursuing your dream or something like that. You're not looking at around and being like, well, I'm not hitting these marks.
Right.
And I'm not succeeding in where I should be to provide for family, but I'm just going to keep going. It's like, so I wanted to see if you had any of those kind of in your life, any landmarks or anything that you've thought, or Mikey, even you, like if by age 30, if X doesn't happen, I'm gonna reevaluate my life and be like, all right, do I keep pursuing X? Because it doesn't seem like it's working, or do I need to readjust and move this way?
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Because it definitely
that's a great topic.
It affected my life because like that's a reason why I didn't move down to Nashville, and that's why like I started doing, and like I think the Lord blessed that. It's not like you can't do that, but like in my season, it's like, okay, it didn't make sense, but I almost just did it just because everyone else was doing it. But I had to take that check of like, no, like I'm not in the position to do that.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be wise for me to do that. And I have these landmarks in my life that if I don't hit X, Y, Z, it's like, well, I need to stop and I need to readjust. Then just being like, no, I'm gonna keep doing this because I want to. I can't provide for my family, but I'm gonna keep doing it because I need to do it.
Right.
And I think that's where it's like, that's as entrepreneur, as creators, whatever it is, I think that's like always the draw of like, how much do you push and keep going? And then how much is like just reading the signs like it's not working. Yeah. And be okay with that. Like it's not a bad thing. So I think. Yeah. I want to talk about that.
Yeah. It's a great topic. I don't know. I mean, I have many thoughts, but
lay them out.
Mike, have you had a similar
wake up?
Yeah, or like period of time where you've had to sort of readjust?
Yeah,
your thinking.
Yeah,
or your direction.
Yeah, I can start.
Yeah.
Well, and so my thought, even what you're saying, it's like there's I think the quality of having like grit and pushing yourself and like not quitting is also like a very valuable thing. But you have to, like you're saying, like you have to like get your head out of the sand every once in a while, like look around and be like, is this working? Is this moving in a direction? Like, where do I need to change to make it work? Because it's more of like, I like the thought of like work smart and hard. Don't just work hard. Don't just work smart. Work smart and hard. Because if you just work hard, then you're gonna never really get anywhere. And if you don't work smart, or if you only work smart, then it's just gonna be like I don't know. I think it's very easy to fall into like laziness and manipulation and that type of stuff where it's just
Right.
like, oh, I'm just going to outsmart everybody and get people to
Yeah.
do stuff. It's like, put in the work, but also be very intelligent with your work.
Right.
And so that's kind of like my thought on that. And then it's like it's just being aware and being real with yourself where it's like, all right, what is the plan? Like, what is in 3 years, what does this need to look like? Or what should this look like? And if it doesn't look like this, like what's an acceptable way for it to look and what's an unacceptable way for it to look?
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's something that's like very much so like on my mind, even right now. But yeah.
It's good. I think there's one thing that I think you both are inherently, you both kind of have an inherent knowledge of, but just to make sure that it's clear for people who may not necessarily be thinking the way that you guys think, is like, what does good look like, or what does like, what are my responsibilities as, in the different roles that I'm in, that, like whether roles such as like business owner, it could be one role, but like husband or son or college student or father, there's different roles that like, I'm not just going to wake up one day and self-select out of any of the roles that, I'm thinking of, like husband and father, you know what I mean? Right. So like you were alluding to some of that, and I think that's just kind of a given for you guys. Yeah. It's not a given for everybody, unfortunately. Yeah. So that is just one thing that I think it's important to get clear on, like, what are the roles and responsibilities that you've been placed in as an individual that you need to steward, and there's no opting out of that. Right. Like, you need to steward that, you know what I mean? And it's like, and to your point, in some cases, like if you're the breadwinner in your household, and that's and like your family is relying on that, like you can't choose a life of poverty that neglects putting food on the table for your children, literally putting food on the table. People say put on the food on the table and they're making six figures. It's like putting some good food on the table, buddy. Like,
it's steak every
day. What I mean? It's kind of an inside joke me and one of my friends have, that people talk about putting food on the table. It's like, you're making some like $1.20, like, and talking about a raise, putting food on the table. Okay. All right. No, but it's just a funny aside. But that is just one thing before thinking about, and I feel like a cadence around those checks, is helpful. But just thinking about which responsibilities do I really need to be a steward of, and allowing those to take priority.
Yeah.
And that's kind of leading to the other thing I was going to mention is priorities. And priorities can shift. And I think oftentimes, and you hear this a lot from like a lot of people when you're online listening to things, is like, audit your time and be more effective with your time. I mean, we're going to go through a book about being effective, so like there is an element too of, in working hard, it's reorienting the priorities that you fill your time with and being able to execute effectively on those things. So those are two underlying components: priority of your time, and there's a matrix called the Eisenhower matrix. It's really good to look up for deciding what is important to be focused on. We can get into it in a minute, but then the other one is like, what are the roles and responsibilities that you can't opt out of, and that you should not opt out of. So yeah, any thoughts on those, or any like what do you guys think about those two kind of underlying things?
I definitely agree with the roles, because so that more and more, I think I can kind of say as like guys, like I'm understanding more and more like my role as a man. I don't even have a family yet, but like I kind of understand like what that would look like, and the things I need to do now to kind of get to that spot. Yeah,
build a foundation. Yeah.
So I think it's definitely good to like make clear like what are the things that I need to do. Yeah. And if that's like providing for a family, like then that means you can't use your money to play the lottery or something like that, maybe, because you have to like provide, and like you can't just throw away the money just because you want to. It's like you have to do those responsibilities. So I definitely think it's a good idea to like really evaluate what you need to do and what your responsibilities are, and then like plan accordingly. It's like, can we take this risk? Yes or no. If it's no, then it's like we should take the risk.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. One of the roles, and I think I may have given you a copy of this book, but it's called I Am a Church Member, but that's one of the roles that I think people don't think about a lot in being a member of a church and being a member of the body, what the responsibilities are there. Like there are truly responsibilities. This is not like you go to the grocery store, then you go to church, then you go to the movies. You know what I mean? It's like you're not consuming church like you would a movie or your food. Yeah. There's like it is a role like a father or like a husband. Being men, the three of us. So like that, I think that's another role that we could probably do a whole series of podcasts on that. We could probably launch a whole nother podcast on that. And maybe bring in Rob Flood or Jared Mellinger. Because we would probably need to be on the receiving side of some of that content. But anyway, I think that there are, it's so funny you bring this up because I feel like this is something that I am a huge proponent of. And it's been a consistent thing that I've really, really wanted to be a huge part of, like how I plan, how I think about moving into different phases of life. And that existed from, deciding on which college I went to deciding on the major that I went to and then going all out on that major, even when I didn't want to, for 4 years. Year 3 was not into it. But I was like, I'm not rechecking this until, I've finished this degree, and then looking at that, reorienting towards like, okay, I'm going to taste this, this, and this. Now I'm going to reorient again. There's probably 5 or 6 in my short career so far times where I've reoriented. And it's almost like, people have like different labels on it, like goalposts, I think is one, landmarks is another, like strategic planning, or like even like you think about a retreat, or like looking at taking a step back and putting your life on, like kind of on the table of components and evaluating what you see, compared to where you want to be going. It's kind of how I'm picturing what you're talking about. Yeah. It's I feel like there's a few different ways to evaluate that. I think the one area that I've also really benefited from is developing a group of people that you trust to help evaluate. I've been in an echo chamber before of my own mind, or even just only like-minded people. But it's really powerful to have some people that you have given permission to sort of challenge your thinking on that. Ultimately, it's your decision, but like giving you a little bit of that pushback. And it was funny. I'm in this season right now, believe it or not, but which we could talk about further. Probably in like 2 months. But I had a conversation yesterday with a coach about this. And one of the things that she was talking about was having people give you a dissenting opinion about what you're planning to do. And that allows you, oftentimes people, especially if they're passionate about where they want to go, they meet that with defensiveness. And they're like, no, this is like, I shouldn't be doing this because it's, not the right move, or I do need to be making money in this way. But it also helps evaluate where your blind spots might be as you kind of reflect yourself. So there's a balance. I personally have determined that I like to go through a round of self-reflection and evaluation before bringing in that opinion, just because I've been in situations where that opinion has swayed me so much so that like a year after I made a decision, I'm like, oh man, this is kind of that person's decision, because it swayed me so significantly. Yeah. So I typically go through a period of self-reflection, then a period of pulling input in from peers, mentors, and people that are kind of outside the domain. Like I'm making a business decision, ask my wife about it, who has zero interest in business. Yeah. It's like she'll bring things that I'll never think of because I'm like so focused on the business decision, Yeah. And then finally, the final component is like kind of sitting with the information a bit and then making the decision. And I feel like this is probably, are you thinking about it more of like big life decisions, bigger life changes?
No, I think this could be anywhere. I think it's more just being aware. I think taking the time to be aware. I mean, obviously I think this applies more drastically to the big life changes. But I think it's good to kind of always have a check on like what are my responsibilities.
Yeah.
It's like even like I think it came back to like what are my responsibilities? Like, well, should I hang out with my friends tonight or not? Well, if I have a test to get to, like, it's probably not a good idea.
Right.
So I think it's good to kind of I feel like to have those kind of checks and balances of like I'm gonna do this because like it could go into like the bigger like a burning yes, like what's your bigger yes than anything else. But I think the landmarks thing plays out more drastically in those bigger decisions.
Yeah.
Of like I'm gonna move here. Well, I'm not gonna move here.
Right.
It's like I'm gonna take this job. I won't take this job. And
Right.
why?
Yeah.
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 So I think there's a scale. I think you see it more drastically in those higher stakes one.
Right.
Like for me, it was like, do I pursue music and move to Nashville, or do I still pursue music but do other stuff back in Pennsylvania? And I think I was more worried about, well, if I feel like I was pursuing this really blindly, it'd just be like, well, it's just the next thing I need to do. Instead of being like, okay, well, is what God has you to do, but is it the best thing for you to do now? I think that's where I was like really like, I don't want to turn out to be that guy who is still playing music or still pursuing this X thing and didn't change or switch directions even though he should have. I think that's where I was like, all right, I want to make sure that this decision is right. And what I got from it after I listened to people as I thought about it is like, okay, I feel like the Lord's calling me to be in Pennsylvania, and He's blessed that immensely. And I still get to do music. I still get to do those fun things. I'm not pursuing it like I would be in Nashville, but like I still get to do creative things, and God's provided a job and stuff for me. So it's like, yeah,
that's cool.
I think it's just important to know. I think it's important for people to just take the time to do it.
I think it's also like just to recognize that it doesn't have to be like a crazy shift either. Because like going into it a little bit of like, say you did stay in Nashville, but instead of like being an artist, you changed to be like a producer. So you're still like in the music scene. You still have all the connections. You're still pursuing it, but you're pursuing it in a different way that maybe you can find more financial security or a better situation for where you're at.
And
like,
the funny thing is, actually, I have I become more of a writer. I become that's more what I love to do. But like other opportunities have come up now, like videography. I do all these other creative things, and like I'm making a living out of it. So like I definitely feel like it might have happened in Nashville, but it might have been more painful in Nashville. Yeah, being like, well, I'm not an artist. It's like, but it's like.
Yeah,
I felt I felt like here it made more sense to go through those like growing pains. Yeah, in more of like a safer spot. I have my family here. I have a job, and like I can work through all those things and still pursue it. Yeah.
But even like if you would like move it into like business, I'm even thinking of like you and like your career of like going from like sales to then like building out that skill to then like starting to sell like software to then buying a software company, and it's like. If you didn't get your head like up and out and like look around of like what's doing it, you could have stayed in that system of like just selling, and like not see an opportunity there that you could then move into, and then another opportunity. It's like when your head's just down and just working, you miss the potential to be a writer and a producer, and you miss the opportunity to start a business and build a business, and you miss like whatever it is. Like when you're so focused in on like the specific things, you don't look around and like see the look at your goalpost and like see, all right, do I need to like shift this? Do I need to change something? Like, and
that also, I think it comes with like, I think you can get your head down and stuck if you find your identity in that one more than anything else. Like if you're like, this is who I am.
Right.
I think I'm relating that to musicians and in the creative aspect. So like business is a little different probably, but still probably similar. But like as musicians and as creative people, like we're a little more emotional and attached to the thing that we create. It's like, that's just who I am. Like I am an artist. I am Christian Knob, the artist.
Yeah.
And I can only be the artist.
Right.
And instead of being like, well, maybe Christian Knob isn't the best singer. Maybe he's not the best thing. So but he
I don't
might
know.
have.
Let's see.
You can go stream my music.
Quick plug.
On Spotify, I have music. Don't judge it. All right. No, but like, it's like, okay, well then maybe I'm not, but maybe there's a great opportunity like as a writer or something like that. And it's like maybe like in business, it's like maybe you started the company. I'm thinking about like the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And the one guy who was the CEO, I forget his name.
Yeah.
But then his skill set wasn't actually CEO skill sets, but he enjoyed it, but he didn't really feel like that was the best. And then when he moved into like, I think it was the advisor or whatever, like on the board,
Yeah,
like
more of
head
like
of
a
the board,
networking,
he was like thrive
relationship
there.
Stuff, yeah.
I think it's like getting your head up and being like, okay, like, and I think having the humility, I'm not saying that I'm like, I've made it, but it's like something I'm still learning. It's like, I need to have humility to be like, is it worth like throwing a tantrum or dying on this hill to like make that happen?
Yeah.
Or is there another way that I can really, I think that's where in my life right now, there's some changes that are happening, which is great in business wise, but it's like, all right, like I have to be like, okay, I can't do this. I can't do that. I'm like, this is a little too much.
Yeah.
Maybe this is my skill set, but this is my skill set.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, well, I thought it was this, but I'm not.
Yeah.
It's like being okay. Okay, that's okay.
Yep.
Readjust. I think that's where it's like goalpost is like, okay, like I could keep fighting this and not make much progress, or I could pivot and maybe make huge progress.
Right.
I think it's just being willing to get to that point, and I'm not even there yet, but like it's more and more like, okay, cool, like I want to be willing to be able to get that point.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said too about like the willingness to sort of try new things as well, especially depending on where somebody's at in their career or in their life, is like exposure to a variety of different things. Like, I mean, there's like the examples if Michael Phelps never went into a pool, like he would not have realized his natural capabilities for swimming. Yeah. You know what I mean?
He's got
Right. So like it's something like that is like there's a time too, like for me, and coming off of Michael Phelps' example, this sounds incredibly prideful.
Oh boy.
Let's hear it.
So it's not nowhere near that level of expertise, obviously, but but like I was expecting and was like, if you asked me, there was 0% chance that this wasn't happening for a very long period of my life, that at 30-ish, I was going to be graduating my residency for orthopedic surgery. Like that was the plan. Yeah. Like, and if you were to question that, it would have been met with defensiveness for a long period of time. And it was like, no, like that's happening. Like that, there's no like, oh, could it happen? Yeah. Should it happen? Would it happen? Well, here I am, 31, and never stepped foot on a medical, in med school, let alone, at a residency in orthopedic surgery. So, but there's, and I feel like that's a lot of people's story. To your point, there can be, I think there's like great questions to ask yourself during that season of like introspection and determination if like you're on the path that you want to be on. Yeah. And I would encourage, and I think we could probably flesh out a few of those questions now.
Yes, do it.
But like there's also like a cadence to that. There's like a cadence that could be too often. You don't want to be evaluating your life every day, because then you're not working hard, like you're not having that level of grit. So there's a balance in the cadence for sure. But it's important to have a cadence. Yeah. And then one thing I was just going to mention too, that a counselor told me one time that I use in my marriage a lot in decision making. But it's like, is this a turn off of, like, are you on the interstate, right? And you're making a turn off an off ramp and kind of like meandering around some side streets. Yeah. It's like, if you're about to enter another interstate, it's like you should probably talk to your spouse about that. You know what I mean? But like if you're like going to turn left, on, Main Street here and then turn right onto Gay Street in Westchester, it's like you're within the town, right? You're just like exploring the town. There's not like huge changes being made. Like I think about that in my business, like hiring and firing or like developing new products within my software company is like, I'm not going to discuss with Autumn whether or not we should hire this person. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not, she'd be like, I don't know, but it's like, hey, should I get into a construction? It's like, that's a fully different interstate, right? Like she should be involved in that. So like, that's another element too. If you're making a decision where you can think about it as like a network of roads, if you're making a decision that feels like entering a highway or even like a main road, you could insert some of this introspection and like advice gathering into that process prior to making the decision. Because there are a few times like buying rental properties or starting a party rental business. Those were probably more so like they weren't side streets, but I did not go through the proper process with both of those examples to like gather the information and have that time of introspection. So that's one example where I wish I would have done what you're talking about with some of this. I don't know if the decision would have been different or not. Yeah. Could have been the same, but it would have been a more educated and thought out decision, So that was one area.
Yeah. Do you have any questions off the top of your head that you could ask as you're going through that?
Yeah. So I think,
or have helped you.
Yeah. I like the concept of inside out, where like, what are my motivations for making that move? And being honest about the motivations, because like you could surprise yourself, when you really take a step back and think about it. One thing I did want to mention is the context, your context in deciding. Like for me, it's super important to sit down with a physical pen and paper at like a park or without electronics and like take a walk for half hour to an hour, sit down, think about it, maybe spend a half day, unplugged. Cause like there's always distractions, right? Everyone's trying to grab your attention. You know what I mean? So it's like being able to limit the distractions and really get into the frame of mind, and sit with those decisions is important. But yeah, the inside out is sort of the concept that I think about for those questions. One main question is the motivations. Is it money motivator? Is it money's usually a symptom? So like if you're like, oh, this is great money, it's like, well, what is that money going to buy you? Like, why do you need more money? Like, what kind of lifestyle are you trying to live? That's a big one. The time, commitment, and there's opportunity costs on time. So like the opportunity cost of spending my time here compared to here, like, and what are those opportunity costs? Kind of getting like the elements of the decision identified. And I mean, this is like very in line with how you read scripture, right? We're supposed to notice first because we want the scripture to influence our thinking, as opposed to like inserting our thoughts onto scripture and projecting what we want it to say immediately, right? It's the same concept of like, you want the elements to kind of flesh themselves out and be pretty honest about those things from an emotional perspective, a logical perspective, like how am I feeling about this decision over this decision? What are they, like, what's important to me? What is this showing is important to me? Like my actions are showing what's important to me more so than your thoughts, right? Like you could think like, I really want to be a healthy person, but like if you're eating terribly every single day, it's like, well, you don't, like, it's not as important as you think to you. So like you kind of thinking through like, what are the actions that I'm taking that, and determining what truly is important to me. What are my motivations? What truly is important? And getting all those elements fleshed out. That's helpful. I think then it's does this align with, like, core values can be a sort of a cheesy topic, but I think if you dive into them and take that seriously, it's like, what to my core do I value, and like, is what I'm doing, is this decision aligning with those values? And if not, why not? Is it a nuance? Like, to your point, is it like, well, I'm going into the music scene, I'm targeting this type of job. It was like, well, if I could still do that. I could just target this type of opportunity, and it's a little bit more aligned with what I value, Yeah. And then the other thing is, like, trying to visualize, in my mind, like, if I visualize myself in this role, like, what am I thinking? How am I feeling about this? Like, am I excited about this 5 years into that endeavor? If I'm not, why not? Is it worth not being excited about? Is it like a call to a grind? Things like that.
Yeah.
Help. So I threw a lot out there, but
yeah, no, it's good. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Cause I think for me, it's like, I think similar with that. It's like responsibilities, time, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. What would you guys add to that?
I mean, you kind of touched a little bit on it, but I think it's just like also just realizing your responsibilities. And I think you maybe one of your questions, or one of your things that you should talk about, but it's like, I mean, as like guys, you're supposed to provide. It's like, you shouldn't make a decision. If you're like the breadwinner, you shouldn't make a decision on like sacrificing that. So I think it's also just being like, all right, like, people around me can, like, for like Mike and I live together at the apartment, but it's like, it wouldn't make sense for me to like kind of blow my money and not pay rent. It's like, okay, well, I can't just throw my money away. Right. So I think it's being honest with where you're at in your situation, and even like your financial situation. Like, can we actually do that? I think that's probably what I would add too. Just a little bit of like, realizing.
And even like, I think learning to be a good risk mitigator, where it's like not throwing yourself into the deep end and stuff and being like, well, it has to hit by this time, or it has to do it by this time, or it has to be, because then you're like, the clock is ticking and there's so much stress to just figure it out. And if you find ways to like mitigate your risk, you can do it for a longer period of time. And it's not like, it doesn't need to be all consuming. You can give it, because everything's taking time. Everything takes time to actually like become. And so like, instead of trying to just be like, well, I need to get it by this date, I need to get it by this date, I need to hit it by this time, and like understanding that like if you mitigate the risk, you can pretty much figure out how to get more time, or you can then change that risk mitigation where it's like, okay, it's starting to work more, let's do a little bit more here, but not too much because I don't want to overdo myself. And it's like, working a job while also pursuing business until the business gets to the point that it can truly support you. You don't hurt yourself then in the end. And like understanding how to walk that out. And like, that's a lesson I had to learn myself. And it's like, even just understanding that now, and the more I talk to like business people, entrepreneurs, that type of stuff, like a lot of times they are very good at that, of like, all right, how do I make sure that no matter what, in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, this business isn't dead, or this whatever I'm pursuing isn't just dead. But let's take practical steps and hit practical goals and make sure we're after the right things, that we're going to get to this point, that we're moving in the right direction, but not to the point that like, if it doesn't work out, we're toast. So we're risking everything. We're betting everything on this. And it's like, you don't want to bet the house. You don't want to like, no, you don't want to do that. And that's something, I mean, we've talked about it many times. It's like, you don't want to bet everything on a chance of success. And it's, there's a study that's like, if like entrepreneurs are asked if, it's in one of the books, but it's like asked if they would rather have like 80% chance at like $1 million, 50% chance at like 3, and 20% chance at 5. And like throughout, all the entrepreneurs said the $1 million because of 80% chance, highest chance. Where a lot of other people that are just in like normal jobs were saying like the 20% chance for 5 million. Like, oh, let's hit the lottery. Let's hit the 3 mil. Oh, let's do 50-50, flip a coin. Yeah. And it's like, no, you want to, it's like, do you need $5 million? Like, what's the difference between 5 and 1?
Yeah.
Is there really going to be that much of a difference in your life? Like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
but is it worth the risk?
Or
And there
other
is.
or other million.
But like
There's actually a very quantifiable
Right,
difference
okay.
between the two.
but I'm saying like
But if
the
you're wise
risk,
with the money, that one becomes
the risk
Okay.
factor though. The risk factor though is like
Yeah.
so not worth it.
Yeah.
And it's like if you can secure that million, then you can turn it into whatever afterwards. But
Yeah.
if you risk getting nothing, because that was the alternative. You get nothing or you get 5. You get nothing or you get 3. You get nothing or you get 1. And it's like, well, if you got $1 million, you could turn that into more.
Yeah.
And it's like just like if you got 5 million, you could turn it into more.
Right.
And so it's like it doesn't really matter. So
Yeah.
why would you throw all the risks to potentially get that nice step
Right.
to go?
Yeah.
And so it's just, but it's the mindset.
It's
of
being
like,
realistic.
The entrepreneurs
Yeah.
are just good at mitigating risk, and that's where I had to reflect on myself. Of like, all right, I'm not very good at risk mitigation. I'm trying to get much better at it. And so it's like, all right, how do I make it so it's going to actually last?
Yeah.
And that one, it's not all on me, and then 2, it's not full of risks everywhere, and it's just like, oh, if this doesn't work out, I have to restart my life. Like,
Yeah.
no, you're not trying to restart your life. I'm not trying to restart my life, and I'm only 25.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
imagine
Yeah.
5 years from now, 10 years
Yeah.
from now, 15 years from now. You don't want to restart your life.
Right.
Yeah, and I think people can forget. Just anything in life is like a lot of like longevity. Like it's the people who stay in the game the longest. Like I'll go back to music. It's like the musicians who are playing now, who are big now, have been doing it for the past 10 years, and it's been just consistent working.
Yeah.
I think that's where it's like with any business, even like Amazon, whatever it is. Like it was just the consistent, like every single day putting in the time.
Jeff Bezos calls it the day one mentality.
Yeah.
You know, just getting started.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, I think they started the company in like 93 or something. In like 2003, he had 10 years of shareholder letters, and every single one, he's like, yeah, we're just getting started, you know?
Yeah.
But,
Right.
and he is.
Now what?
Yeah.
I think that's also a mindset too, because I was listening to like, I guess this kind of works, but like I was listening to a podcast episode with a guy who was in the Navy SEALs, and he was like the people who made it through buds and stuff like that are the guys who are just like, I just want to get to lunch, I just want to get to here, and he's like, the people that failed were the ones that like, I'm not gonna be able to make it 6 weeks. I can't do this. Like that's so far. He's like, no, the people that made it are the ones that are like every single day or every single little bit. It's like, hey, check that off. We got it. I got my snack for the day. Sweet.
Yeah.
When's the next snack? Oh, 3 hours. I can make it 3 hours.
Yeah.
I can do a couple more push-ups.
Right.
And it's like those people that made it. And I think that's like, especially for me, I'm kind of just preaching to myself right now. It's like I want everything right now. It's like if I could just get it all now, like if I could get 10, like
We should read your tattoo.
Oh, yeah. Patience. That's awesome. Honestly, this actually took me 3 years to get.
Yeah, nice.
But then when I got it, I was like, okay, I'm never gonna forget. And this is my reminder for having patience.
Yeah.
But like, it's like again, it's like, would I rather get if I had 80% chance of getting 1 million or 10% to get 10 million? It'd be like,
Yeah.
one makes more sense.
Yeah.
But it's like the people that just want it now. It's like, what? No, like I want to get out of my 9 to 5, so I'm gonna do this as I'm gonna pull out like.
Yeah. I will say it is a pretty those decisions are such personal decisions. I think it's is interesting. I have risked almost everything on the current software business. I put it all on the line.
But even in that, I remember you saying like, even if it did fail, like you would have a sales job that you could fall back. Like you could go get a sales job.
That's where I was going
That
next.
is your risk mitigation. You
That-
have the
yeah.
skill sets to still take care of your family if you needed to.
Well, that's where I was going to go next. Was what looks from the outside as a risky move is off, especially for like really elite operators in business, because that's like where I know a lot of stories around. But like what looks on the outside like a super risky move often isn't, and it's often like some of it's even incremental change. So like, take for instance Amazon, since I brought up Jeff Bezos already. Amazon being a online retailer, that was like their business, and then the Amazon Cloud, which is like cloud computing services. It's like, so we're an online retailer selling books through to pretty much everything. Now selling online computing services to software companies. It's like, that's like for somebody who has built a publicly traded juggernaut of an online e-commerce business, why would you do that? It's a very risky thing. But he it was the business was actually born solving a need in the online retailer business of like every single time they needed to do anything with their servers, it was a huge issue and impacted their profitability massively. So he started to buy up data centers. He started to build out infrastructure to support those data centers. And then all of a sudden, like the team was like, well, why don't we sell this excess computing services that we have built out for like all of the Amazon Pay, all these ancillary products they were starting to build around it, software products. It's like, why don't we go sell those to, you know, other companies that are doing software products? And now Amazon Cloud is way bigger than their online retail business. Their retail business is typically a loss leader, meaning they don't make any money on that. It's really a leader for other businesses or other products that people will subscribe to. And it was like, so from the outside looking in, if you were just to look at that, be like, that's totally out of left field. It's a different customer base. Super risky, and like in general, it is still like, it is still, even with that story, with that understanding, it still is. But the risk, to your point, like truly is pretty mitigated because they already own all this stuff. They already have all this infrastructure already built out. It's just packaging it and productizing it differently in the business or to their customers. So that was one area that, you know, is important to think about. And there's a lot of like flashy, you know, business headlines like Elon Musk with Twitter. If you like read through his history, he used to have a company called X, and it was like it failed. He like learned about why, and it was like very similar methodology to Twitter. And then the whole concept of like he works with his values. He's working on like human being problems. So like having a public discourse is becoming a human being problem, you know, especially for Americans. So it's like him doing that was aligned with his core values. Mm-hmm. It was a fraction of his net worth to invest in it. And it was also aligned with lessons that he had learned previously with a company of the same name. You know, yeah. It was just like, be like, why would he do that? Like that was so many people, why would he do that? It doesn't make any sense. Why would he do that? It was like, well, that is, if you think about his core values, lessons that he's learned, and his history is actually in software with PayPal. It's like, he actually knows how to run a software company. It's right in line with his core values. And he had one of these companies that failed, and he learned a lot about that. And it's like a fraction of his net worth. It makes sense to do. Like, that's a good move. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was just interesting how like it's very personal. Is the decision is very personal. So that's another thing, you know, getting the insights of others too is helpful, because it's like if someone can passionately describe all the risks of Amazon becoming a cloud computing company, and they passionately describe all those risks, it's like, okay, now I know all the risks that I need to mitigate against. You know, it's like, it's not oh no, you can't do this, or you shouldn't do this. It's not safe for you to do. It's like they can't make that decision. You know, they've given you all of the information that you need in order to make that proper decision. It's like Abraham Lincoln with his team of rivals in his cabinet. It was like, imagine if Joe Biden became president again and like hired Trump as his chief of staff. That's what Abraham Lincoln did. He like literally built a team of rivals because he's like, I'm going to get all of the information available so that I can make the right decision. Yeah. It's like, that is pretty freaking awesome. You know, like you should do that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We like to isolate ourselves.
Right. Yeah. And
surround ourselves by people that agree with us.
Yes,
won't push back.
Exactly. And like, you know, people who are listening to this, you know, for you, it might be like, you need to learn how to risk mitigate. For others who are stuck in their 9-to-5 for 20 years and have always want to start a business, be like, you need to figure out how to take some risks. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where it's like, so it's like, that's why it's very personal. You know what I mean? So it's good to have like the principles and the questions to like operate off of, because then you can make that personal decision. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those are my thoughts.
I love it. Great thoughts. Man, we're getting close to the end.
Yes.
Any closing remarks from you two?
I feel like there's a few different topics that came out of this that we could probably dive into. Like
We should write them down.
well, one of them that you have written down that I thought was good was like you said how do I live within my means of my finances, and how do I budget so I don't overspend?
Yeah.
I think there was like knowing your numbers is part of this topic.
Yeah.
Which we barely scratched the
Yeah.
surface on, but there's others
Yeah.
that we could touch on and really dive deep on.
Yeah.
I think.
I think the biggest thing I've found, even just with finances, because I'm trying to take my finances more serious,
Yeah.
it's like the more you know, the better you can make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And like I like to, and I'll just confess this, like I like to be like, not like I don't want to say innocent, but like what do you call it when you're like you don't think about it and like it's just kind of like
Apathetic,
no, I'm not pathetic. It's like, oh man, I'm trying to think of the word.
intentionally naive.
Naive.
Yes.
So yes. So like a lot of times, like
don't care.
I can stay on the naive of like I don't need to know like things are running okay, so I don't need to know.
Right.
It's like I think it's just good. Something that like as we're closing out, it's like I think it's good. And I'm more trying to be like, all right, no, I need to. Don't be naive, because it can be like almost like a bad thing. It's like, well, I don't want to deal with that right now, so I'm just gonna turn away from it.
Yeah.
So I think that's like as you're trying to like as you're looking at these landmarks and stuff like that, it's like don't be naive and just look away from it. Be like, all right, no, I'm gonna look at it. Be like, all right, this is not working. Why?
Yeah.
Or no, this is working. I'm gonna do this. And like I think it's just. I think overall more of awareness. You got to be aware of what's happening.
Right.
Aware of your finances, aware of your life, aware of your responsibilities to be able to make those right calls. You'll make bad calls if you're not aware of those things because you're like, well, I just feel like I want to do this. Well, feelings are great, but is that what you need to do?
Yeah.
So
put the elements on the table so that you
Yeah.
can see them, more objectively. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where it's like, I had to like really, really take my personal finances serious. The longest time it was just like not an issue. Just it didn't really matter to me. It was just like, well, I'm covering all of the stuff that I need to cover, and so it's totally fine. And then it's like, bills start stacking up, stuff changes, and like all types of things change, and it's just like all of a sudden, like it was a good wake up call for me because it was like, all right, like. And the freedom that you find in that, where it's like all of a sudden you understand, like, oh, I'm gonna cover this. I'm gonna have this much left over. I can put this away, and like you start to really like think through like budgeting, planning, like finances, and it gives you a lot of freedom. And I've seen that for years, but it's like once you actually take action into it, you really start to experience it. And then it's like, yeah, now that subscription does matter to me, and I'm gonna remove that subscription because I want to stay in my budget. That does matter to me. I don't want to go out to eat again. Like it's like. Yeah, I don't need to buy beers. It's like I don't need to, and it's like you start to like really think through. It's like, well, could I cut this? Could I cut this? Could I cut this? And then be able to do all these things because of that. Yeah. And it's like I think it's very easy, especially for me for a long time. It's very easy to like almost like put myself in taxing situations at times financially because I just wouldn't really care until it needed to be cared about. And then you like, or all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I have to like figure this out, and you have to like work all this extra time. And you have to, and I think it's very easy to just do that. Especially like how it is in our culture and just life in general, where it's like people don't want to live below their earnings. Like they just want to get a credit card. They want to spend that. They want to rack up all these bills. They want to go. And it's like, even like with college, college is a crazy expensive, but like, and there's good ways to do it. And there's ways that people do that are just like foolish, and they're just wasting their time, wasting their money. And it's just like, you don't realize how much debt you're stacking up and how long it's going to take to pay that off. And so it's like when you take the financial side seriously, then it's like I think you really step into a different, in some ways, like different world financially.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be our next topic.
Yeah, I think we could dive deep into that one. Yeah,
that's a little teaser for you guys for next episode. Oh, we got him. You're hooked now. All right,
awesome, cool.
Guys. Thank you for joining us again for another episode, and make sure you read the book. Can you show that one more time?
The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
And this will be posted very soon.
Yeah, we gotta go.
Oh man! All right. We'll catch you guys later.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Peace.